I spent like 20 days on Greenlight, which was way less than I thought I was
Mm.
going to. Because I'm not a huge studio, I don't have a massive amount of followers. But something went right. Somebody at Valve saw it and enjoyed it, and they were like, "Here you go."
So I am joined by Dave Stanley, who is the developer behind Skelattack. So thanks
Yeah,
for taking a little time to talk with us, Dave.
yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Why to start things off? Why don't you give us the convention pitch for Skelattack? Tell people what it is and why they should be interested.
Okay, so for centuries, adventurers and raiders have traveled across the land into dungeons for treasure, glory, whatever. But this Skelettack is not about them. So I would invite everyone to think about what life is actually like for the dungeon dwellers. Things are not really as they seem. Like as a gamer, we've all spent most of our lives running through dungeons, just whacking down anything that moves, without any thought for do they enjoy that? Like, what, like what's their daily life like? And Skelettack dives into all of that. It's been a lot of fun to work on.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll jump on that point. So one of the things that raised my eyebrows to Skelettack that got me interested was this flip of the normal equation, if you will.
Right?
Where did the idea come from?
It was kind of a random occurrence that worked out really well. In my day job, I work on mobile apps with my partner, and sometimes I send him simple little demos. And for this one demo I wanted to make, I animated this little skeleton, just a simple walk cycle, and I had used it in a demo, and we ended up passing on it in favor of something else we had on the back burner. So, now I have this art, and ultimately when I decided I was going to kind of branch off and make a game by myself, like a big adventure,
Hmm.
I kind of looked back at that skeleton I had animated, and I was just like, I like this design, like is there a story that I could tell? So I just spent a lot of time thinking about that, and then Skelettack happened.
Mm.
I had no idea what I was going to make. When I started working on Skelettack, I had no programming experience. I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, so maybe I'll just start with a simple platformer. Let me look at some tutorials and just see what happens. And I threw in my running skeleton animation just to give it a little life and be like, to see how I felt about it. And then all these other story ideas started coming to me, and now here we are, just out of Greenlight.
Right. So you kind of touched on the other part, which I wanted to kind of touch base on, was the art direction of Skelettack, and it's really fantastic. And you
Thank you.
mentioned your background is in animation. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you'd go a little bit further into what your background looks like and what some of your inspirations were.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start with the inspirations because they go back even further than myself as an artist. I grew up watching Disney movies, and those were such a huge inspiration. The quality was always top notch. And as I was getting older, these really inventive and crazy cartoons were coming out. Ren and Stimpy, Rocco's Modern Life, Doug was another great
Hmm.
cartoon that I loved. And I saw these people just taking so many liberties with their characters, Squash and Stretch and really crazy faces, but always like very iconic looking characters. They were simple and they moved very fluidly. They didn't have a whole lot of crap on them. They were just
Mm.
very simple designs. So that was something that really stuck with me. And then when I was becoming an artist later on, see, this was like 2007 or 2008. I was on Newgrounds like every day. Um,
Yeah.
all these amazing Flash artists and game designers were on Newgrounds releasing stuff that was just insane. And I was like, "What's Flash?" Until then, I wanted to get into animation, but I didn't really know how. Um, the internet was very different, from how it is now, and
Hmm.
it could be harder at times to just kind of find what you need. So like all through middle school and part of high school, I would have like flip books, in the
Hmm.
back of my notebook, and I would just, it was terrible. It was terrible stuff, but I wanted to like become better at it. So I found out about Flash, and once I struggled to get past the interface on that because
Mm.
Adobe software is just ridiculous. There's so much that they can do, but once I got past the interface on Flash, I started to really like it, and it my first couple of animations were still very, very bad, and I'll never show them to anyone. But it was all like a great learning process, and ultimately, I got into freelancing and was able to make money from doing silly animations, and so it was just like at the time when I was doing it, I never knew I was going to make money doing it. I just knew I wanted to do it. I just love messing around with stuff like that.
Sure.
So it was like a this whole arc of absorbing all this stuff from my childhood and then trying to actually like put it into something that made sense or that was actually good or that
Mm.
people would want to buy or look at or enjoy or laugh at.
Right. So you mentioned that your Skelettack is just out of Greenlight.
Yes.
So I was hoping you would talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, sure.
What what made you decide to go the Greenlight route, and what you kind of found as some hurdles or some really spectacular wins in your
Okay.
time there.
Absolutely. Um, well, as far as prep for Greenlight, it kind of started back in August of 2015, or sorry, 2016. Um, I released the very first build of the Skelettack demo to the Twitter community, and I was just going to use them to get all of this, great feedback
Mm,
on things I did well, things that I could improve on, and if anyone had any ideas for things that weren't even in the game yet that they might like to see, they could drop me a line and let me know. The first version of Skelettack, it looked exactly like it does now, art-wise, because I always felt like I was pretty solid on the art. Um, but the game was a lot different. It was harder. Some of the things weren't balanced as well. People were running out of money. They were running out of magic with no way to refill it.
hmm.
Things like that. And it was just like, as the creator, I could run through the demo front to back, no problem, because I'd created it. And I think it's important as a developer to step back and hand it to your community and be like, you guys play this and just let me know what you think. And then it's just a constant back and forth between me and the players, like what worked for you and what didn't work. And then I was able to make a new build of the demo, which was drastically improved.
Mm,
And it played a lot better. It fixed some bugs that I didn't even know existed when I dropped the first version. So, I had I feel a huge debt to the Twitter community because they were the ones who really let me know, that I was going in a good direction, that they enjoyed it, and that there were also things I could improve upon. If you can't take that sort of constructive criticism, then you're not going to make it very far with your game. So anyway, while I was doing all of this, I was looking to the future, slightly, trying to think about what my next steps were going to be.
mm, yeah.
I I've never put anything on Greenlight before, and I knew that it can be a very harsh community because it's the internet. You know,
Right.
nobody here owes me anything. They don't know me personally. They'll never see me in person probably. And a lot of people they can just drop a nasty comment and leave, and it kind of you
Hmm.
don't have anything to go on. So
Right.
I knew that wherever I went with Skelettack next, I wanted it to be as polished as possible. Just to kind of anyone who had anything bad to say about it, I could kind of like limit it as much as possible by making it the best version of itself that I had ever had. Um, so I did a lot of research, just trying to get ready for Greenlight, just seeing what had worked for people, regarding like their gameplay trailers, screenshots, things that they wanted to show off to the community on Steam. Um, and also, like Steam was always my first choice in my mind because I work alone on this game, and I'm admittedly not really the best at marketing. It's really just kind of I learn as I go.
Mm.
Um, so I I don't have thousands of people following my studio just ready to like buy things from me. Um, it's been a very slow snowball process. Another thing was when I started the Greenlight, I think I had close to 800 followers, which looks good, but you have to remember that most of these users will follow you, hoping that you'll follow them back, and they never talk to you again.
Hmm.
I still have like a very small core group of friends who follow everything I do, and we're very engaged with each other. But the majority of users, you can't. I mean, nothing against them, but they they don't see your posts all the time, or they follow you once and never come back to engage. So I knew that out of like 750 followers or whatever it was, only a percentage of that was actually going to come through for me on Greenlight. Um, so I was kind of counting on the huge uh, Steam community
Mm.
to, kind of help me out there. And they did. Like, it wasn't like a massive amount of votes coming through, but, I spent like 20 days on Greenlight, which was way less than I thought I was
Mm.
going to. Because I'm not a huge studio, I don't have a massive amount of followers. But something went right. Somebody at Valve saw it and enjoyed it, and they were like, "Here you go."
Yeah, I
So
think
that was
that
great.
that speaks to the polish, like you were saying, of the game. It's an incredibly polished build to be out
Thank you.
there on Greenlight. So shifting a little bit, we've kind of already touched on some of your background, but shifting away directly from Skelattack, um, you mentioned that when you started development, you knew no coding. You're coming in
That's
from
right.
an animation standpoint rather than a gameplay.
Yeah.
So obviously that's kind of your background in indie game development, but talk about how you um, what system you decided on using and why, and kind of how you approached it. Because that's, I think, something that stands in the way of a lot of people is just
Yeah.
that initial, I don't know how to do this. So
Right, right.
how did you tackle that?
Oh, yeah. So, like, especially from an artist perspective, I'm such a visual guy. This is not my first foray into programming or
Mm.
attempting to program. I've tried it a number of times before, and because I was so visually oriented, I failed every single time. I had tried to learn ActionScript in Flash to make my own games, and it was just walls of text, and
Mm.
I couldn't really like wrap my mind around it. Um, so I started to lean more towards programs that were like kind of drag and drop. I had tried Stencil, which was great. I actually made like a small, crappy space shooter game. I mean, it was really short and really bad and not optimized at all. But it was the first time that I was like, okay, I'm sort of understanding like how these different components are working together, even though I'm not typing it all by hand. From there, I dropped my idea of making a game for a couple of years, um, and then I had found something called Game Salad, which was another drag and drop, and they were great at what they do. Ultimately, I was ultimately I knew that I needed absolute control, and the only way to get that control that I needed was to program or learn
Mm.
how to program. So I settled on Game Maker, which features drag and drop as well as their own built-in coding language called GML. Um, so I started following tutorials, and I did not touch drag and drop at all. It was nice to have them as training wheels if I
Mm.
needed them, but I just really wanted to learn how to program. And I had seen some amazing things come out from the game maker community,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be a part of that. Like I felt like the program was solid, um, and I knew if I just put in the time to learn, then I could do something amazing as well. Um, so that's kind of how that happened. I just, you know, like 2015, I picked it up and just started digging into the tutorials because the community is very much alive and there's tons of people just waiting to help you if you just ask for it.
Mm.
And so I just kind of built it up from there. And before I knew it, within a couple of weeks, I was I was able to just kind of be in the shower and think about something I would want to add to the game, and my mind would already be like putting the pieces together,
Yeah.
like what sort of code I would need to make that happen. Um, and still, like if you look at Skelattack, like under the hood, without all the visuals, there's like not a whole lot of crazy like groundbreaking stuff going on, but I didn't want that. Like I just wanted to make a game that ran extremely well
Mm,
and looked
mm.
great and told what I think is an interesting story.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Um, what are some of the games that you've played in your past or recently that have been influential in your direction for Scale
All
Attack?
right. So let's see. I'll I'll go back to kindergarten on this one.
Way back.
Yeah. So I came home one day and my dad had an NES waiting for me in the bedroom. I don't even remember what the occasion was, but now I had this thing and I didn't even truly know what games were at that time. I was just 5, but we had Super Mario Brothers and Tetris, but I loved Mario. I never ever beat it as a kid, but I felt like it was so solid and everything worked so well together. And as I got older, I would read new interviews where the development team was just talking about how they they had a lot of things they needed to teach the player in a very short amount of time and without any text. You jump into the game and we all know how fire flowers and mushrooms
Mm.
work. We all know how to go down the pipes. But back then, like we didn't have the internet to tell us this. We just kind of we pressed buttons and we ran around until we figured it out. That was a big that was a big thing that I came back to when I was making like early levels in Skelettack. I didn't want you to get into the game and then like interrupt you every couple of seconds with more text like
Mm,
press this to jump,
mm.
press this to use your sword. Like, did you know you can like jump on the walls and slide around on the walls too and cast magic? Like I wanted you to kind of be able to teach yourself in a way. So um, it was something I really wanted to avoid was just like massive amounts of text. Let like the player is not stupid. I think a lot of AAA games think the player is stupid,
Yeah.
and also you've got a controller with like 50 buttons on it, so there's a lot of extra clutter going on there. But this game doesn't have a lot of inputs,
Mm.
so I feel like I'll tell them what buttons they can use, and for the most part, the player can figure out what kind of things they can do in the world. Um, but I also loved the Pokemon series growing up. That was one of the most anticipated games for me as a kid. When Pokemon Red was about to come out for Christmas, me and my brother freaked out over it. Um, and I loved the story and just being able to walk around that world they created. Same goes for the Legend of Zelda series.
Mm.
That's really up at the top. It's probably my favorite series overall. Um, but in more recent times, I was really into Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate
Oh,
on the
cool.
3DS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game took up probably my whole 2016. I mean, it was such an in-depth game, and the level of polish and the amount of detail that was in everything. Like, there's no way that I'll ever see everything they put into that game. Um, I really appreciate stuff like that. Back to Legend of Zelda, they built this entire world, and they knew that most players or some players would just kind of rush through the main storyline
Mm.
and just get to the end and beat Ganon. But for the ones who really wanted to like learn more,
Mm.
you could talk to every character and you could collect things that had no bearing on the actual plot or your ability to finish the game. But if you wanted to find these extra things, there was value in that from a storytelling perspective. Um, that was a big thing for me in Skelettack.
Yeah.
If you just want to rush to the end, that's no problem. I mean, I think you'll have a fine challenge and it'll be a fun game. But for people who want to learn, like what are these people, what are these skeletons and whatnot all about? What do they think? What are their hopes and dreams? What are they sad about? What are their successes and failures? Um, you can find all of this within the world, and it has no bearing on your ability to finish the game. But I think it adds another level,
Mm.
you know, another level of polish
Yeah.
to. And personally, it's one of my favorite things about the game, and it's not even it's optional. It's not even necessary to complete, but it's one of my favorite things about it.
Cool. To kind of bring this little interview to a close, are there any other indie developers out there that you think are doing something particularly cool that you
Oh
think
yeah,
people might not have heard of that you'd
yeah,
like to share?
yeah, absolutely. I've got a few here. So Voyager Games,
Hmm.
he's a great guy, Sam. He's making a world simulation game called Outer Colony, and he has he has a very impressive background in AI development, and that is the foundation that this game is built on. You know, you're building a colony. You need military to defend it. You've got to like have food and medicine and culture, and everyone in this game, every character has memories
Hmm.
and likes and dislikes and things that happen to them that affect how they'll be on the battlefield. You know, if you've injured your arm in battle, then their accuracy with a rifle goes down, and you're growing this colony and defending it from outside, forces and attacks.
Hmm.
And every time I see something from his game, it's just super impressive, and I think he deserves a lot more eyes on his game because it's really really cool. Um, he's been supporting me for a long time, and it's just this constant back and forth of like, you inspire me, dude. Yeah, well, you inspire me too. He's a great guy, and his game is it looks like it's almost finished.
Cool.
He's taking a lot of pains to make sure it's as polished as it can be, and that's something I respect. So
Absolutely.
hopefully people will go check him out. There's another guy named Trevor. His handle on Twitter is the Shy Guy, but he's making this really in-depth RPG with beautiful pixel art. He does everything himself. He's a one-man show, and his I don't know I don't know exactly where the plot of his game is going to take us, but there's so much lore and so much customization there that I can't wait to get into it. You know, between that, it's called Pilgrimage of Embers,
Mm.
and between that and Sam's game Outer Colony, like I'm not going to be working on Skelattack once I get into these games.
It's
I'm
gonna
just
be
going to be
filling up your
lost.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. A third one, this is a developer I found recently. It's called Guinea Pig Parkour, and it is as funny and wild as the name sounds. He animates everything by hand in
Wow.
Flash. Pretty sure it's Flash, just like I do with Skelettack. But it's everything has so much life to it, and you are a guinea pig in a tracksuit, just kind of running and hopping around and flipping through these levels. And yeah, I don't know exactly when that game is coming out, but I'm really looking forward to it. Like just from a visual perspective, like these things are not easy to animate, and this
Yeah.
guy is like he's all about it. So paying that much attention to something that people they might run past it for a second and not really realize how much work went into animating that little thing that you just ran past. That's the kind of thing that makes me love being a developer and being an artist.
Mm.
Just seeing like I don't think anybody's really going to care about this thing I put in the corner, but I think it completes the scene, so I'm going to toss it in and I'm going to work for 5 hours just to animate it. But I don't know if anybody's even going to care about it. you know,
Awesome. Well, Dave Stanley, thank you so much for talking to us about Skelettack and your background.
Absolutely. Thank you
And
for having me.
yeah, of course, and everybody can find links to his work down below.